Story 1. The House on Black Hollow Road. When Daniel and his wife moved into the abandoned Victorian home on Black Hollow Road, they were warned by the townsfolk, "Leave before the house chooses you." At first it seemed like superstition, but soon, doors began slamming on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and their daughter's toys moved without explanation. One night, Daniel awoke to see a figure standing at the foot of his bed, its hollow eyes fixed on him. He tried to scream, but his voice was stolen. The next morning their daughter was missing. The only clue? Her tiny handprint burned into the wall. Story 2. The Forgotten Room. Lila's new apartment was perfect, except for the locked door at the end of the hall. The landlord said it was a storage room, but at night, Lila could hear faint knocking coming from inside. One evening, curiosity got the best of her. She found an old key hidden under a floorboard and unlocked the door. Inside, she found a room frozen in time, dust-covered furniture, and a single chair facing a wall. On the wall, written in what looked like old blood, were the words, "You let it out." The door slammed shut behind her, and Lila felt cold fingers wrap around her throat. Story 3. The Man Who Smiled Too Wide. Henry commuted to work every day at the same time, following the same routine. But one morning he noticed a man standing at the corner, staring at him. The man's grin stretched impossibly wide, his eyes unblinking. The next day he was there again. And the next. Henry tried to ignore him, but each day the man inched closer. One night, Henry woke up to find the man standing in his bedroom, his grin somehow even wider. Finally, the man whispered. The lights flickered, and Henry was never seen again, except in the background of someone else's morning commute. Story 4. The Dollmaker's Curse. In a small village, a toymaker was renowned for his lifelike dolls. But when people began disappearing, only to have dolls that eerily resembled them appear in the shop's window, the town grew suspicious. A young woman named Eliza decided to investigate. One night, she sneaked into the shop and found a hidden door leading to a basement. Inside were rows of dolls, all with terrified expressions. The toymaker caught her and smiled. "You'll be my finest creation," he whispered before everything went black. The next morning, a new doll appeared in the window, a doll that looked just like Eliza. Story 5. Echoes in the Forest. Jackson loved hiking alone, enjoying the solitude. But one evening, deep in the forest, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, he saw no one. "Hello?" he called out. His own voice echoed back, but it was off. It repeated his words, but in a tone slightly distorted, almost inhuman. He quickened his pace, but the voice kept repeating his every word, getting closer. Finally he ran. Bursting through the trees, he reached his car, only to hear a whisper right behind him, "You can't outrun yourself." He turned around, nothing was there, but his own distorted reflection stared at him from the dark woods. Story 6. The Silent Passenger. Melissa took the late-night train home, exhausted from work. She sat alone in an empty car, until she wasn't. A man in an old-fashioned suit sat across from her, staring. He never blinked. When the train reached her stop, she rushed off, glancing back. The man was gone. Relieved, she got home and shut the door. Then she heard it, a soft voice behind her, "You left me behind." The man from the train stood in her hallway, his face splitting into a wide, unnatural grin. Story 7. The Watcher in the Field. Every summer, Alex worked on his uncle's farm. It was peaceful, until he noticed the scarecrow. It was different this year. It had eyes that seemed too lifelike. And it always faced him, no matter where he was in the field. One evening he saw movement. The scarecrow twitched. That night he woke up to slow, shuffling steps outside his window. Peering out, he saw the scarecrow standing inches away, its straw hand pressed against the glass. In the morning the scarecrow was gone, but muddy footprints led up to his door. Story 8. The Whispering Graveyard. Clara and her friends loved ghost hunting, so they spent the night in an abandoned graveyard. As they set up cameras, whispers surrounded them. At first it was just murmurs, but soon they could make out words, "Get out." Their flashlights flickered. One friend screamed, something had grabbed his ankle. When they bolted for the car, Clara turned back for just a moment. In the distance, a group of shadowy figures stood watching. The next morning they reviewed the footage. The whispers had formed one final message, "We see you." Story 9. The Staircase That Led Nowhere. Ben and his friends explored an old, abandoned house rumored to be haunted. Everything was covered in dust, except for a pristine staircase leading up. The problem? There was no second floor. Just a staircase that led to the ceiling. Curious, Ben climbed it. As he reached the top, his friends screamed. He turned, but they were gone. The staircase was gone. The house was gone. He stood in an empty void, with only the echo of his friends' voices calling for him. Then silence. Story 10. The hotel room that didn't exist. Traveling for work, Nina checked into a small hotel and was given room 306. She went to sleep easily but woke up freezing. The walls seemed different, older. She checked her key, it now read room 13. Confused, she went to the front desk, only to be met with blank stares. "Ma'am, we don't have a room 13. They checked the records, she was never registered." When she turned to leave, a stranger passed her and whispered, "They never let me check out either." Story 11. The girl in the reflection. Mia always avoided mirrors at night. As a child, she was told that reflections sometimes moved on their own. One night, she caught her reflection smiling at her, though she wasn't smiling. Paralyzed, she watched as her reflection raised a hand and waved. The next morning, her mirror was shattered, and faint footprints led away from it. Story 12. The door that shouldn't exist. Kevin moved into an old house and noticed a door that wasn't in the floor plan. It was small, almost hidden behind a bookshelf. One night, curiosity won. He opened it and found a dark, narrow passageway. At the end, there was another door, identical to his front door. When he turned the knob, he found himself standing outside, watching himself inside the house, staring right back at him. Story 13. The shadow in the attic. Sarah inherited her grandmother's house, a place she had always loved, until she heard footsteps above her at night. The attic was locked, but something moved inside. One evening, she mustered the courage to open it. Inside, she found a dusty rocking chair, slowly creaking back and forth. A figure stood in the corner, its face hidden in the dark. It whispered, "You're home at last." Story 14. The statue that watches. Mark visited an old museum where a statue of a robed figure stood in the courtyard. The plaque read, "Do not turn your back." Curious, he circled it. The next morning, he awoke to find the statue in his backyard. It had moved. That night, he locked all his doors and windows. But when he woke, the statue was inside, standing at the foot of his bed. Its head was now tilted slightly, as if it had been watching him all night. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-tingling horror stories.